Imagine a boundless blue sky without clouds, birds, or wind. Now focus on the even blueness. Take a deep breath and let all your thoughts come and go while you remain focused on the blue sky. In this very moment, you're not interested in the past or the future or anything else the mind wants to show. Your full focus is on the encompassing blueness of the sky. Now drop it. What's left? This is a technique of spontaneous enlightenment written in a 5,000-year-old tantric scripture and taught by the great Saint Ramana Maharshi forever. Today we shall see how that happened in his own words. Please enjoy his life story and give this video a like. Namaste. Ramana Maharshi's experience. It was about 6 weeks before I left Madurai for good that the great change in my life took place. It was quite sudden. I was sitting alone in a room on the first floor of my uncle's house. I seldom had any sickness, and on that day there was nothing wrong with my health. But a sudden violent fear of death overtook me. There was nothing in my state of health to account for it, and I did not try to account for it or to find out whether there was any reason for the fear. I just felt, I'm going to die, and began thinking what to do about it. It did not occur to me to consult a doctor or my elders or friends. I felt that I had to solve the problem myself, there and then. The shock of the fear of death drove my mind inwards, and I said to myself mentally, without actually framing the words, now death has come. What does it mean? What is it that is dying? This body dies. At once I dramatized the occurrence of death. I lay with my limbs stretched out stiff, as though rigor mortis had set in and imitated a corpse to give greater reality to the inquiry. I held my breath and kept my lips tightly closed so that no sound could escape, so that neither the word I nor any other word could be uttered. Well then, I said to myself, this body is dead. It will be carried stiff to the burning ground and there burnt and reduced to ashes. But with the death of this body, am I dead? Is the body I? It is silent and inert, but I feel the full force of my personality and even the voice of the I within me, apart from it. So, I am spirit transcending the body. The body dies, but the spirit that transcends it cannot be touched by death. That means that I am a deathless spirit. The realization. All this was not dull thought. It flashed through me vividly as living truth, which I perceived directly, almost without a thought process. I was something very real, the only real thing about my present state, and all the conscious activity connected with my body was centered on that I. From that moment onwards, the I, or self-focused attention on itself, by a powerful fascination. Fear of death had vanished once and for all. Absorption in the self continued unbroken from that time on. Other thoughts might come and go, like the various notes of music, but the I continued, like the fundamental Shruti note that underlies and blends with all the other notes. Whether the body was engaged in talking, reading, or anything else, I was still centered on I. Previous to that crisis, I had no clear perception of myself and was not consciously attached to it. I felt no perceptible or direct interest in it, much less any inclination to dwell permanently in it. The consequences of this new awareness were soon noticed in my life. In the first place, I lost what little interest I had in my outer relationships with friends and relatives and went through my studies mechanically. I would hold an open book in front of me to satisfy my relatives that I was reading, when in reality my attention was far away from any such superficial matter. In my dealings with people, I became meek and submissive. Going to school, book in hand, I would be eagerly desiring and expecting that God would suddenly appear before me in the sky. What sort of progress could such a one make in his studies at school? One of the features of my new state was my changed attitude to the Meenakshi temple. Formerly, I used to go there very occasionally with friends to look at the images and put the sacred ash and vermilion on my brow, and would return home almost unmoved. But after the awakening, I went there almost every evening. I used to go alone and stand motionless for a time before an image of Shiva, or Meenakshi, or Nataraja, or the 63 saints. As I stood there, waves of emotion overwhelmed me. The soul had given up its hold on the body when it renounced the I am the body idea, and it was seeking some fresh anchorage. Hence the frequent visits to the temple and the outpouring of the soul in tears. This was God's play with the soul. I would stand before God, the controller of the universe and of the destinies of all, the omniscient and omnipresent, and sometimes pray for the descent of His grace upon me so that my devotion might increase and become perpetual, like that of the 63 saints. More often, I would not pray at all but silently allow the deep within to flow on and into the deep beyond. I stopped going out with friends to play games and preferred solitude. I would often sit alone and become absorbed in the self, the spirit, the force or current which constituted me. I would continue on this despite the jeers of my elder brother, who would sarcastically call me sage or yogi and advise me to retire into the jungle like the ancient rishis. Ramana's renunciation. When Nagaswami, Sri Bhagavan's brother, remarked, "What use is all this to such a one?" the meaning was obvious, that one who wished to live like a sadhu had no right to enjoy the amenities of home life. Ramana recognized the truth in his brother's remark. Making the excuse that he had to return to school, he rose to his feet to leave the house then and there, going forth and renouncing everything. For him, that meant Tiruvannamalai and the holy hill of Arunachala. With quick steps, his heart throbbing with joy, he hastened straight to the great temple. In mute sign of welcome, the gates of the 3 high compound walls and all the doors, even that of the inner shrine, were opened before him. He entered the inner shrine alone and stood, overcome before his father, embracing the linga in utter ecstasy. The burning sensation which had begun at Madurai vanished and merged in the linga of light there. In the bliss of union, the journey ended, completing the renunciation. Immediately upon leaving the temple, someone called out to ask whether he wanted his head shaved. Taking it to be the injunction of Sri Arunachala, he consented and was conducted to the iron column tank, where a number of barbers plied their trade. There he had his head completely shaved. Then, standing on the steps of the tank, he threw away his remaining money, a little over 3 rupees. He never handled money again. He also threw away the packet of sweets he was still carrying, discarding the sacred thread and wearing only a loincloth, thus unintentionally completing the act of renunciation. Living as a sage, he returned to the temple. In the scriptures, one is to enjoy a bath after a head shave. Although there had been no rain for a very long time, Sri Arunachala himself came in the shape of a single cloud which hovered directly overhead. Immediately there was a short, sharp shower, so that before entering the temple, he was given a bathe. Entering the 1,000-pillared mandapam, he sat in silent absorption. But being subjected to the pranks of local urchins, he did not remain there too long. Seshadri Swami, a revered ascetic who had arrived at Tiruvannamalai a few years earlier, attempted to protect Swami, as he was now known. These efforts were not very successful. In fact, at times, they had the opposite effect. So Brahmana Swami sought refuge in the Pathala Lingam, an underground vault in the 1,000-pillared hall. The sun's rays never penetrated the scale, which was inhabited by ants and vermin. So absorbed was he in meditation that he was completely oblivious when he was bodily carried out of the Lingam vault to the shrine. For about 2 months, he stayed in the shrine, absorbed in samadhi, paying no heed to nourishment. Food had to be put into his mouth, and he remained immersed in the effulgence of bliss, barely conscious of his body, not speaking or moving, so that to onlookers it appeared to be the most intense tapas. It was not really tapas at all. He was simply ignoring the body he had ceased to need. He was already a Jivan Mukta, liberated while living in unwavering consciousness of identity with the self, and had no karma left to wipe out, no further goal to attain.